Cameron, he recently interviewed Diddy's witness.
I think people will find any reason to not let women be victims.
This is not the first female celebrity. We've been wondering about the quality of her goods. It's not going to be the last.
But what the do you think this is? This is entertainment. I don't look at it strictly from the lens of the victim.
At the end of the day, you're basically talking about victim.
His testimony is valid from two consenting adults.
This is a case where this guy credibly can say, hey, I was too victimized by a more powerful person and put in an uncomfortable situation.
Speaking of attention, because Jay, you had a great point when you talked about everybody's trying to get attention. It's all about attention seeking. And so Cameron, he recently interviewed Diddy's witness, who so happened to be nicknamed the Punisher. Woo! I'm sorry, I had a moment there. I felt like she should be on but it's okay. So her real name is Sheree Hayes, by the way. He's a male escort. And so during this interview, he really wanted to know all about Cassie's box. And I am so curious in regards to, one, do you think this was an appropriate conversation for him to ask, or not even conversation, an appropriate topic for him to ask pertaining to Cassie, who is currently one of the many witnesses for the freak-offs, apparently, and in this Diddy Rico case? Was it a little bit too early for him to be asking about this? Or, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out what exactly, was it ethical, or what exactly was he trying to accomplish, or was it just all getting to know about Cassie's box?
Okay, was it too early? If there's ever a time, then now's a good time. You know what I mean? Because it's what people are talking about. And he had someone who could tell him, right? Now, I don't mean to be the creeper in the room. I want to say all the right things like, these mics aren't tools to beat down people and to take away their privacy and da-da-da-da. But when you go to court, all the stuff comes out. And unless the court documents are sealed, the news people are going to report it. So her situation there is already in discussion in living rooms across America. Okay. And now we have somebody who's actually been in the living room of her living room, if you understand what I'm saying. Right. And if somebody had been to, before it was MTV Cribs, if somebody had been to like the Brat's house, I'd be like, hey man, you at the Brat house? What's it like in there? So it's the same question. Hey, you were in there. I want to ask you about the drapes and the carpet. It's the same question. You know what I mean? It's dealing with whatever. We just got through talking about Cardi B, who put out WAP. Apparently, sexual organs and sexual expression is an open topic now, right? So I don't know why we clutching our pearls. I would like to be indignant with the rest of y'all, but to be totally honest, the man had a question. He had an answer. He asked the questions, right? If whether or not the Punisher answered, that was on him to say where he put his respect for that particular experience that he had with Cassie, right? That was that. But for the man to ask the question, I know people want to say it was journalistic, but I feel like there was some journalism in there. Honestly, I wanted to know the answer. I still do. I might find out for myself. Anyway, it's not my turn. Y'all go ahead.
I think people will find any reason to not let women be victims. Like, we have to do something to diminish their character in order to validate the potential offender from not looking and being as bad as he could potentially be. I think Cameron is a bitch nigga. I think anybody that decides to ask a question about somebody's cuckoo who has been open in her own opinion about being a victim of rape. I think we get caught up on it's not proven. But we wasn't there. She said it. She feels it. You don't think she's impacted by this type of dialogue or minimalization of who she is? Not even her character, not even what she's saying, but just her body. I think is very primal. I think it's very sucker-ish. And I think it's something that people do to deflect from the reality that this woman is saying that she was raped by one of his partners. Like, Cameron could just keep wearing pink and doing bitch shit because that's what he's used to. But it's like he should do something different at this point.
We have been talking about the quality of Halle Berry's box, or the lack thereof, for the last 30 years. It's on the table. This is no different. We've been talking about this, various others. She just comes to mind. This has been out in the public for about 30 years. We've been, oh man, is it trash? Like, we don't know. We just got a eyewitness or a live participant who asked the guy, hey man, listen, she's been doing this. You were there. Was it, top tier? What's the Yelp rating? If somebody was going to ask it eventually, the people want to know. I think it's relevant to the case. So this is not the first female celebrity. We've been wondering about the quality of her goods. It's not going to be the last. So we just have to be big kids and suck it up. That's my take.
I think there's a larger conversation here, right? But I'll start by saying that all of this is fair play. All of it, each and every piece of it, because that's the world that we live in today, right? There's no longer, say, journalistic standards, right? I mean, there are places where that exists, but if people are not gravitating to those places, who cares? Right? A former rapper, whether it's Cameron or Joe Budden, right, can have an opinion, can pick up a microphone, and people can enjoy the content, because that's really what it is at the end of the day. I mean, what did you expect for even CNN, for example, who interviewed that guy, right? The guy who was on the stand, CNN interviewed him. I mean, I guess he did the right thing. He went out there and apologized and all that. But what the fuck do you think this is? This is entertainment as news being proxy for people to have these types. Now, whether or not Cameron took it to a different place, but if you follow Cameron, that's just who the fuck he is. It is what it is, the show that he does that garners millions of views. So I'm shocked by the surprise of all this, right? If we're not going to have the deeper conversation, because ultimately I think whether or not we pay attention to it, who fucking cares? I mean, if we're going to be honest, I don't look at it strictly from the lens of the victim. Because I do think, that's to be debated in regards to the court of law. We did not have a proceeding prior to now, whether or not we want to attest to the facts. So outside of having those facts, I know that we talked about a settlement. I know this trial is happening. I don't know the motives beyond that. So I don't know that it's necessarily out of bounds if we're not going to then admit that all of this shit is out of bounds. You know what I'm saying? Like, we know way too much shit from people anyways. That's the culture. Whether they tell us the information themselves on social media, whether a trial comes up. I mean, people are mad that we can't even see this trial. Like, there's people lining up outside. This would be made for TV. We saw OJ, right? So we have a thirst for these things, and I'm not mad for proprietors of business, right, to engage in the shit that the public wants. You dig what I'm saying? Now, depending on how they move in their real lives, it's a different story, but that's just the world that we live in. And so, yes, you know what I'm saying? It might be a little crass. Maybe I wouldn't necessarily do it. I don't even know what the answer was. So maybe I'm just not that
I can
interested.
tell you what it was.
But I can imagine that there may be people who are. And yeah, especially if you're hitting it raw. I mean,
that's a good point.
I mean, if that was part of the testimony, and that just seemed kind of crazy in and of itself, especially if you're talking about sex workers, but whatever. I mean, inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah. So, S&M, you were saying?
I just have the urge to jump in so strongly, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And so the good news is he kind of deflected. He started off saying that for the most part, he was uncomfortable because Diddy was doing some things with his own privates, and he knew that Diddy swung a certain way, and he was kind of uncomfortable because he just wanted to make sure that he was protected and more focused on his protection versus on what he was actually doing with Cassie is what his response was.
So he was always watching his back as
Yes, yes, this is what she's saying. He couldn't
That is
focus on what he
correct.
was doing
That
because
is
he was too
correct.
busy watching his back. Like, oh, wait. Okay.
That is correct. That's exactly
Watch
what
this
he was
nigga
doing.
walking around behind me. It's weird.
And so this is what so I wanted to add
Oh,
that
we can laugh at that though, huh, Tia? But go
to
ahead.
let you know what
When
he
it's the guy
said.
that's a victim,
But
it's
it's
funny then,
also
huh?
because that's what he was open about. And I think the reason why he said that was because he recognized that this may not be the time to have that conversation. Now, if it's like after the trial or whatever, by all means, ask these type of questions. But during the trial itself, while it's going on, knowing how traumatic it appeared to her at the minimum, this was not the time to ask the questions. So what? All the men around the world want to know what her box was like, And this is not the time to ask the question. Ask it
For
after the
who?
trial. Ask it after everything has
For who?
transpired. Who? For her herself. We are constantly re-victimizing the victim. And
Wait,
this is Go ahead.
This was Cameron having this conversation with this guy. So how are we?
But she's,
and I'm saying, if
like
we
you
talk about
mentioned,
it
it's
after the
media.
trial, aren't we re-victimizing her then? Isn't it better to talk about it while the
Technically,
trial is
yes.
going on?
No, because okay, so this is what I'm going to say. I personally don't think it should be talked
I think
about.
you got all that one,
Period.
Jay.
I don't think it should be talked about. Period. Because at the end of the day, you're basically talking about a rape victim, right? At the end of the day, whether she was participant early on or not, at the point it became rape, you're basically talking about a rape victim. And so I don't think it should be talked about.
Now, if you're asking about participatory sex, like if you're asking about consensual sex, the details of consensual sex.
Hold on, man. None of this stuff has been substantiated, right?
Well,
she feels that she was raped. For you and any other person, that should be enough to respect it until we find out something differently. It's just common courtesy, human being shit.
That's not true.
Asking about her box is just minimalizing her experience and then making her a victim again.
Punisher. Did she feel that she was raped by Punisher? No, she did not. So then his testimony is valid from two consenting adults.
Exactly.
Well, I know about her. I don't know about that part.
Exactly. And then
I don't know about Punisher or anything about that.
I know Punisher just said he was very uncomfortable.
The Punisher is also a victim here for talking about whatever the case is about, right? Because he
got paid $6,000.
And Cassie got paid $millions
a month. He was doing a job.
She was doing a job.
Look at how calculated you are,
what
or
is
callous you are by his perspective, with the facts lined up for him the same way it would for her.
You can only be a victim if you have a clitoris with this lady.
Financially, he said he was uncomfortable being in a space with a guy, and any guy, regardless of whether you're doing sex work or not, is probably under duress if you're not gay, and some nigga is behind you fucking walking around and grunting and shit, right? But you don't have no empathy for that. But y'all all that back. No, but hold on, S&M. Y'all last episode, I said when we were talking about the whole other conversation, I said it's funny how people want tolerance, but they don't want to give tolerance, right? Y'all want empathy, but don't want to give it either. This is a case where this guy credibly can say, hey, I was too victimized by a more powerful person and put in an uncomfortable situation. And y'all can't even, for the sake of conversation, broach that for the sake of what exactly? Y'all do away with your own argument here, which is why the overall point is, that's why Cameron doesn't give a fuck, because y'all don't give a fuck, right? We all sometimes don't give a fuck. So to stand here and pretend like we do because it's, oh my God, the cute little light-skinned girl that we believe was victimized, even though there's evidence to the contrary that she too was victimized by other people, but whatever, right? Y'all can't even give the brother a modicum of, oh, damn,
no,
you know what?
I
agree.
Right,
man. That brother was put in a power position where he had to literally watch his back. We just cackled about it. But y'all want to sit here and get mad that Cameron is not cackling with some nigga who was talking about him having sex with old girl on his particular show. What the fuck are y'all talking about, man? The inconsistency that y'all be on is why I don't fuck with none of that shit y'all be talking about. Go ahead, Delvin.
No, so if Cameron had a woman, and this is to the ladies, if Cameron had a woman on his show and he asked, is about the size of Diddy's manhood, would that be off the table? Would you be like, no, you can't ask about Diddy's manhood? That's out of bounds. There's a trial going on.
That's nasty.
That's irrelevant. You see where I'm going? See what I did there?
So I think, unlike y'all, we don't
point.
care about Diddy's dick. We not none of us have even. I've never met a woman who asked about Diddy's dick. Y'all said everybody wants to know what her pussy feels like. Who? Who is everybody? I've never heard anybody ask that question before Cameron asked that question. Y'all never thought about what her pussy feels like.
Jay thought
Y'all
about
not sexualizing this person.
Actually,
you said you did? Okay,
I
stand
threw
corrected.
Jay under the bus. He threw Jay.
I really had. He threw me under the bus. And honestly, I hadn't. I've never heard her song. I never really looked at her. She just
come on now. So
No,
Cameron stands alone in his infatuation with a woman who just happens to be victimized. He wouldn't ask him about that pussy before she came out as a rape victim. That would be
Don't
different.
do Cassie like that. She had hits, man.
She had 2, 1.5.
I want to be your.
That was it. She was 17.
Girl.
Nobody
I
wants
want to be your official girl. No,
I'm interested in the Cassie that was having sex outside of Diddy, like the cat, like because that's what I'm saying. Like she was the same. Everything is still there. That was there, right? And she's married now, so she got an after Diddy life there too, whatever, right? So I'm like, all that fuzzy stuff in the middle is just.
So rape victims don't go on to live healthy, happy lives and relationships? That's what you're saying?
I'm saying you can. If you're a porn star, we're still gonna watch the video.
They still have relationships outside of their porn, which is their career.
Yes, and we don't watch that.
And they have real relationships in houses and homes that don't include porn. That
Y'all
girl
are
was a
missing
girl
the
regardless.
point.
She had other partners. Okay.
Y'all are missing the point.
Go ahead.
It's COE. It's content, y'all. Like, this is the world that we live in. Do something about it or just
It's
deal with it. But we
BNS.
all participate
Mhm.
in the shit, and we want to be fuzz
Mhm.
about the lines that we want to draw.
Mhm.
Stop playing. Who
Well,
want to be, speaking of being fuzzy, you wanted to say something else to them?
yeah, actually, I was ready to say that brought it to another point where you said earlier about having a deeper conversation in regards to where it's aligned with media, right?
Mhm.
Because one of the conversations that we didn't talk about was the whole fact that they leaked the Jane Doe identity, right? What's the point of being a Jane Doe or a John Doe if your identity is leaked through the media? And so where is that line? Are there ethics involved, or should there used to be ethics in media? And so is this something that we need to have a conversation about? And but
No.
noting that we're also doing a podcast at this time, talking about some of the same topics too, it becomes like, well, where's that line? What should and shouldn't be said? And at the end of the day, I'm just going to say that Nic has a great point that it's all content, and everybody is looking for that. You know how we have that 24 hours news cycle now, where before we didn't have, and so news was news and it was hard hitting, but then we became this 24-hour news cycle, so they always have to come up with new content, new hard hitting, new exciting, salacious type of information and so forth. And so that's the last thing I wanted to add on that.
1000%. That's why I said there's not much that we can do about it beyond just as individual consumers, right? Because we can choose to go to the reputable sources, but people get their news from the shade room. People get their news from the internet, right? Or from podcasts. So you can't really stop that, I think, in any credible way, especially because people are ignorant to even journalistic standards, for example, right? So yes, maybe the ABC won't tell you who the person's name was, but Sasha's and them blog will, right? Because they want clicks and views. That's how you monetize it. So I just kind of feel like the landscape of media and where people get their information from has long since, changed. And so now I get it. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is.